What is the spiritual perspective on wealth? There's an idea that wealth is negative, that if you want to be spiritual, you have to renounce your money. The rich person is always the bad person. The Jewish spiritual perspective on money doesn't agree with that. It looks at money as being a tool. It's a gift from God when you have it in abundance. But really what it is, it's a way of capturing spiritual value. It's a way for a person to be able to trade spiritual energy with other people. You can't jump in friendships. You can't jump in wisdom. You can't jump in time. Nothing fluctuates like that. The only thing that has this really strange existence in the world. You can gift it, you can take it, you can get it. It's currency, it's money. It's a storage mechanism, but it's a spiritual storage mechanism. When you go out into the world and you begin to spread this by giving it to other people, giving it to other causes, to giving it to other opportunities, what you're doing is you're creating a flywheel, a spiritual flywheel for yourself. You're saying to God, essentially, I'm responsible. I know how to handle this money. And if you trust me with this, imagine what I would do with more.
Hey, welcome back to Fulfillionaire. I'm your host, JP Newman, and today's episode is really special. We're diving deep into the core principle of what does it mean to actually be a fulfillionaire, someone who's not just financially successful, but deeply fulfilled. Today's topic is giving, and not just giving money. We're talking about giving your energy, your time, your attention, love, and ultimately yourself. And who better to explore this than my rabbi, my good friend and my teacher, Rabbi Mendy Levertov. Mendy has guided me personally on a journey from scarcity to abundance and from abundance to impact, where giving becomes not an obligation, but a joyful spiritual practice that opens up the flow of life itself. Enjoy the episode. Hi, this is JP Newman on Fulfillionaire, and boy, do I have an episode today. What a gift. Today we're going to talk about giving. I've been thinking about this podcast episode for almost a year and a half now, because the power of giving is such a topic and not understood by most people. We think giving is something we do later on. First, we got to make money so that we can become better givers, or giving's for others, or I give enough time. And when we talk about being a fulfillionaire and what it's like to truly be a fulfilled person around your money, giving is essential to your happiness. Because you see, we're going to talk about more and more is exploring this idea is actually when you're giving, you're actually receiving. And when we talk about four-dimensional wealth and the key element of how do you go from scarcity and lack of money or lack of clarity, and if you finally get the gift of abundance, what you call abundance, your wealth and your manifestation, well, as you know from my story, that doesn't always lead to fulfillment. In fact, for my story, it led to anxiety. It led to chaos because I had no financial framework or spiritual framework of what to do when abundance came my way. I promise you, today, you're going to hear about the spiritual technology as well as that exact framework for what giving is and what giving isn't. Because you see, there's actually rules around giving. It's not just give $5 here or $10 here. It's just as focused as your financial plan for your business. And so to help me do this today is my dear friend, my teacher, and my rabbi, Rabbi Mendy Levertov, who has become a fixture in my life and my family's life. It all started, Rabbi, I guess about 6-7 years ago when you invited me for coffee. And when a rabbi invites you to coffee, and by the way, you told me, I didn't know this, but you told me that I didn't show up, that we actually had a date for coffee.
Correct.
And I made a horrible first impression because I didn't show up. Is that true?
True story.
So I didn't call or anything. I just didn't show up.
I called you at some point in the beginning. I was waiting at Cosmic Pickle, as it's called now. Yeah. And I was waiting to see this strange name, JP Newman. We had been in touch via email. Yes. And then I said, you wanted to come to Kabbalah class.
Oh.
And you weren't able to make it.
Yes.
So you missed the first one.
Jewish mysticism is Kabbalah.
So you're like, you missed the first one. You're like, fine, I'll make the second one. And the second one, you're like, I can't make it. And at that point, I was like, this guy runs in a very different schedule. Let's just reach out to him and see if we can go for coffee and go from there. I reached out. You're like, yes, coffee, instantaneously. This is where we're doing it. This is when we're doing it. Went. And 10 minutes in, I called you gently to see if I was in the wrong place. And you're like, I'm in Houston. Sorry. My apologies.
Wow.
We'll reach
so much for time wealth. Apparently I had some time wealth work to do at that point.
No, it actually, I think I actually am of the opinion that I was meant to be that way.
Really?
Because the next one was very focused.
Yeah.
We both came, like, this is the second round. We're going to really, have a conversation. It wasn't like, let's meet for coffee because we've been emailing. It was like, we missed our first one. Clearly, we have to have a conversation. Let's sit down. Let's meet each other and let's talk. and we sat for 2 hours.
Yeah. And, Rabbi, was interesting. When I think about our first meeting together, like most people, I'm like, okay, this is going to cost me money, right? I mean, to be honest, like, because I get a lot of people nowadays for philanthropy. You're like, oh, God, it's going to cost me money. And I knew nothing. Oh, I'm busy. Like most people, I'm busy. I don't have time. This is going to cost me money. I can do it later. Like all the excuses that we all have for things. And thank goodness I came the second time, because you have really been part of my fulfilling journey so deeply, spiritually and personally, on so many levels. Besides bar mitzvahing both of my kids, you're really good about studying on my schedule, which I know isn't always the easiest schedule to study around, but we've been patient, and the conversations we've had have been incredible. And you've really been with me through the journey of like growing up, seeing what money is, what money isn't. Good times when, the real estate market was booming. You've seen me now as the market's gotten tougher, some harder times, but I really feel like I really owe it to you as a mentor and a teacher to really help me with the principles of money. And I can tell you now, the giving that you actually didn't encourage me. It was my idea. True. It was our studying that it became my idea. The dividend, I can tell you just to start, guys, of me, pushing me to my edge of giving till it hurts, which you didn't even suggest. This is all on me. You just gave me some information. You just gave me some wow. Anyway, the point is, I can tell you now that giving is such a it's such a feeling of joy for me. Just continual joy. And the more I push, the more I want to give, the bigger I want to do it. And we're going to get into this. Like, I know you talk about this idea that actually, if you ever want to, in the Jewish faith, if you ever want, God says there's only one time you can prove or test that God exists, and that's the way you give money and how you will see it back. In fact, if you don't mind, let's just start there. What is that test? In all the Torah, the Judeo-Christian Torah Bible, we call it, one time God says you can test around giving money. Tell us about that.
So the Torah speaks many times, the Jewish Bible speaks many times about giving and gifting and helping others in many different languages, right? There's obviously help the stranger and help the poor and help the Levite who never had a job. They were supposed to serve in the temple, but they didn't have like an agricultural job. But at one point it says tithe. And it uses the language, I'm going to say it in Hebrew first. It says aser titasher, which is a double like tithe, thou shalt tithe, like very formal, like you definitely should. But the sages have examined the language, and they said, if you read it just a little bit, the vowels in Hebrew, you can read the same word multiple ways depending on where you put the vowels, because the vowels are not built into the word itself. They go around the word. So they said aser or asher, tithe, bishvil shetit asher, that you should become wealthy.
Wow.
Your tithing leads to wealth, not the reverse. I think this is one thing that people really think about a lot, is that they say, when I'll be wealthy, then I'll give. When I make my money, then I'll start to look for opportunities, how to help other people. But till then, I mean, that's irresponsible. How could I even think about that? And what Jewish spiritual wisdom teaches us is that no, it's the other way around. You give and you become wealthy from the giving. And God says, when you give, I'll make you wealthy, and then you can test me. Test me. B'chanuni nabazais is the language.
I love the word. Actually, it's literally test me.
Test me.
Which
test
is wild.
Me. And in general in faith, you're not supposed to be testing God, right? The famous spiritual people that have, I would say, negative. We look at them negatively over the history of time. Job and other people who were tested by God, and they start testing God. And the minute people start testing God, things go doesn't go well. It goes upside down. In this, God says, yes, do test me. Give, how much do you want to make next year? Okay. Commit to giving 10% of that to charity, and you'll make the other 90%, which is wild, which is radical, because it relies on faith, it relies on belief in the system, but it flips the paradigms upside down. It's the opposite of what a person's usually used to.
Incredible. I know for me, and maybe you can explain this. We're going to talk about some examples of actually, because I was a skeptic of this, but it keeps proving itself time and time again, and we'll get into that story in a little bit. But what is it emotionally, Rabbi? I can tell you that first of all, like along the lines of being a fulfillionaire, we talk about feeling safe is paramount. A lot of people don't even feel safe around their money because they're not clear. They don't have a plan, or maybe they're in scarcity, or maybe they have a lot of money and they just don't really have a framework for it. I just find that part of liberating myself emotionally from that scarcity, I call it the net worth trap. When one day you're trying to make money, you're chasing, then you get money, and then you're in the net worth trap, and now you're just trying to protect, and defend from losing the money. And it's the same circle of scarcity and fear where you never feel exactly safe. And I know that giving has become, and really through like our study, we're going to go through this like the technology, the 8 levels of giving. It turns out, guys, there's actually energetic levels. Some of them are lower and some are higher. And these are thousands of years old. They literally tell you how to give and how to give at the highest level. And like learning all this, which we're going to talk about today, empowered me. And it's giving me freedom to become a full fulfillionaire, to give more in joy where it doesn't hurt. I talk about the river flowing, the currency of a river, which is part of being a fulfillionaire. If currency is money, well, can you imagine people are like, if you're not giving it away and you're just receiving, what kind of river current would that be? A current flows. That's giving and receiving, giving and receiving, giving and receiving. If you're just like, one day I'll give, but I need to receive right now, you're really not living truly in currency, which is kind of ironic when you talk about money. But I really see that. So I don't know if you can explain or what it is. There's an emotional component of freedom when you actually give, besides being tested by God, that you will get, which is a good transactional thing. It's a good proof of concept. But tell me, what is it emotionally that I'm experiencing, or what does it do for you?
Well, first question I wanted to ask you is, why do you feel joy when you give? Because you mentioned that.
Yeah. The joy that I'm getting is knowing that there's something bigger than me out there. So when I give, especially if it's to something that matters to me or someone who matters to me, it's like the energy feels bigger than myself. Like because I've got these currency and I've got enough currency to share some of my currency, it's like it's bigger than me. And anything that's bigger than me is generally creates fulfillment. When we're so self-focused on ourselves and our drama and our money and our business, that tends not to create a lot of joy. It tends to create a lot of meanness, which gets boring after, and kind of sad and depressing after a while, from my experience.
I think that to your currency point, what is the Jewish perspective on money in general? What is the spiritual perspective on wealth, right? So there's an idea that wealth is negative. It exists out there. That if you want to be spiritual, you have to renounce your money. You have to renounce...
Money is the root of all evil. We talk about these money stories. Yeah. We're raised as a child, and money's the root of all evil. You'll be sinful. You'll never find joy if you have money.
And the rich person's always the bad person. A lot of these fairy tales, you have, Uncle McScrooge, who's swimming in his big swimming pool of dollars, and what a terrible person. And you have the 3 little ducks, and they're all running around. They have patches, but they're all happy because at least they don't have money. Thank God for that, right? And it's everywhere. It's everywhere. What's interesting is that the Jewish spiritual perspective on money doesn't agree with that. It looks at money, but it also doesn't look at money as being like this virtuous reward that automatically comes if you're a virtuous person, and if you're holy, suddenly you're just going to get a crazy amount of wealth. It looks at money as being a tool. It's a gift from God when you have it in abundance. But really what it is, it's a way of capturing spiritual value that exists in the world. It's a way for a person to be able to trade energy, spiritual energy, with other people. When I think about this, in a certain sense, money's fake. How do you know money's fake? Friends, relationships, time, health, which are the 3 other main things that we speak about, are things that you can't gift. Right? If you're healthy, I can't come to you, JP, and say, you have a headache? Let me give you 1 unit of feeling better. It's not a video game, right? If you have a terrible relationship with, a friend, same thing. You can't just suddenly show up and be like, you know what? I need a gift me 2 friends. Gift me 2 friends. I don't have any friends. I need friends. Oh, I have so many friends. I have 500 friends. I'll give you 5. Doesn't exist. In money, it does exist, right? Paper worth. How many times are people technically worth something and they're not actually worth that? How many times is somebody worth something and in 3 days, their value, whether it's because the stock market went up and down or Bitcoin went up and down or the real estate market went up and down, and suddenly their worth jumps. You can't jump in health. I mean, obviously, God forbid, it's an accident, but you can't jump in friendships. You can't jump in wisdom. You can't jump in time. Nothing fluctuates like that. The only thing that has this really strange existence in the world, in where you have both, you can gift it, you can take it, you can get it. It's currency, it's money. It's very, very strange. You can work really hard and make a disproportionate amount of money. You can work really, really hard and make very little. You can have a huge amount of abundance and then gift it to somebody else, and suddenly they have what you had. You have $1 million, you gift it to somebody else, now they have $1 million. It's not like their $1 million is less million. It has the same buying power. They can go and invest it the same way. Now, of course, obviously, if somebody doesn't know what they're doing, they're going to take the $1 million and they're going to probably lose it. But the idea that it's a very powerful vehicle. It captures effort. We put it into the world.
It's a storage mechanism.
It's a storage mechanism, but it's a spiritual storage mechanism. When you go out into the world and you begin to spread this by giving it to other people, giving it to other causes, to give it to other opportunities, what you're doing is you're creating a flywheel, a spiritual flywheel for yourself. You're saying to God, essentially, I'm responsible. I know how to handle this money. And if you trust me with this, imagine what I would do with more.
It's so funny you say that, because more and more I'm speaking about being a fulfilling rabbi, is people keep asking me, what was the moment, JP, when you went from being stressed out and anxious in your 30s and you hit your BMW and you had a panic attack when you put your hands on your dream car? How did you go from that to feeling all of a sudden good about money? How did you get to become a fulfillionaire? And I say, it was the journey of knowing that I could trust myself and that I was a good steward and understood money. That was the transformation. It wasn't 1 second. It was a journey of reading, studying, growing, and establishing the fact that I know I'm trustworthy, because I wasn't sure that I was. How would I be with my friends? How would I be with my wife? How would people perceive me? Why am I doing this? All those stories you're talking about, the root of all evil. Mine was my Zeta, which is my grandfather, said money doesn't grow on trees. So it was a scarcity thing. And the other thing I got was, if you have money, the shoe's going to drop somewhere else. So I literally fought for years this idea that money was scarce, it doesn't grow on trees, and that if I was actually to achieve it, the shoe had to drop elsewhere. Some joy had to drop out of my life. And so my brain, can you imagine the push-pull, the gas brake from those early memories? And I just love what you said, because that was the moment that everything changed for me with that trustworthiness. So when you say, when you're practicing giving and you're establishing that relationship, you're telling God, I'm trustworthy and a good steward of not my money. I'm a good steward of your money, God. Because as we know, money actually doesn't even belong to us. If you really want to get into it, unless you're an atheist, but generally in the traditions, money belongs to the higher power anyways.
So I'm going to share a story about a rabbi, a Hasidic master, who lived in Poland, that embodied this idea that your money isn't always yours. He was a very, very spiritual master, a very big spiritual leader, and followers would come to him and they would ask him not just for spiritual guidance, but all the times they're very, very poor. They'd ask him for help, for dowries, for health, for starting a business. They're in debt. And they would ask him, what he would do is he basically write a check. Essentially, he would write, to a certain follower that he had in one of the cities, this is how much, please help this person. This is how much I would like for them. And then they would go off and they'd travel to that person and they would get their money. And this is it was a known thing. It was very common. He did it all the time. One time a person comes that needs a significant amount of money, and he wrote this note to one of his followers who lived in Warsaw. The poor person goes to the follower in Warsaw, who looks at the note and says, that's a lot of money. I'll do half. And so the individual, the poor person says, I think it was a dowry for a child. And he says, look, I wasn't instructed to come get half the money from you. I was told to come and you're going to help me out. If you can only do half, then I'm just going to go back and receive instructions what to do next. He goes back to the Hasidic master, the Rabbi, as they're called. He goes to the Rabbi and he says, he gave me, he wasn't able to fulfill the check. He wanted to only do half. And I was like, oh, if that's the case, no problem. And he just writes a note to a different follower, and he goes, and everything's taken care of. Our Warsaw man, suddenly his business begins to crash, and everything he touched.
The guy gave half. So he
He,
gave the
he
whole thing.
wanted to give half. He wasn't even. He didn't even give a half.
Oh, he didn't give half.
He refused it.
Okay.
So everything starts going sour. Everything's going sour. And
Business starts to just go off the ropes.
he's trying to figure out
He
what.
feels like he's cursed or something.
So he realizes he must be cursed because he thought it was a bad judgment on Tuesday, a bad judgment on Wednesday. But if it's every single day, days and days in a row, he thinks back what triggered it. And he thinks maybe it's when this person. So he runs now to the Rebbe and he says, one time I asked for a 50% discount on your charity request. And that's it? Everything's done? Are you punishing me for saying no? Like, what is going on over here? And the Rebbe tells him, let me explain something to you. When my soul was going to come down to earth, God told me that I was going to be a spiritual kind of guru, a spiritual master. I was going to teach people and educate people, and that I was going to be fabulously wealthy. And I actually said, I do not want to be fabulously wealthy. Being wealthy takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort to manage it. As you well know, to be on top of it, it can lead to anxiety and stress. And I don't think he was worried about the anxiety and stress, but it takes time. If you're going to have wealth, you have to be on top of it. He said, I don't want to have both. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create treasuries. Certain followers of mine, they're going to be the ones that are going to hold my wealth. Whenever I need to help somebody, I will dip into my treasury. I will send them to my treasurer, and that person takes care of them. Up until this time, you were a faithful treasurer. Every time I asked you to help a person, you took from my money that you were holding, and you gave. When you said you need a 50% discount, I realized I can't trust you anymore, 100%. And I need to have access, I have liquid cash. I always need to have access to my treasure. So I moved my account. There's a different chassid, a different follower that he's going to be in charge of the account now, and he'll become wealthy, and he'll do with it. So this is, the man like freaks out. He's like, is that it? I'm destitute forever? He says, no. You had management fees. You did a good job. You took care of it for many years. You'll be fine. Wealthy never again. It wasn't like a punishment. It was just, you were supposed to be just upper middle class, like a regular dude. I gave you the gift that you should have the ability. And also, that man who was, doing the tzedakah, doing the charity, was so powerfully wealthy. I mean, he got the credit for it, and it was hard for him, and he got he earned the so to speak, the merit, and he helped people. It wasn't just that. It wasn't like he only gave charity to what his master gave him. He had abundance. He spread it. He was powerful. But the core of the story for me is that God gives us all of our wealth in storage. It's yours so that you can help people. It's yours because you're a responsible steward. It's yours. You get to enjoy it as well. But don't forget where it comes from. The Bible, the Torah tells us there will never not be poor people in the community. And it's interesting because you see that you're like, the language is written a little bit more obtuse. It's a little harder to read. But what it says essentially is there will never not be poor people in the community. So all the commentaries jump in and they're like, what's going on? We mean there'll never not be poor people. There always will be poor. There's always going to be a need. You're always going to have wealthy people giving poor people. And so they explain, you have to understand, God created a world where there are people who are in need and people who are going to be giving. The ones who are giving are going to be receiving merit from those they give to. They receive abundance. They receive spiritual energy when they give. And they receive a very transcendent experience. Because essentially what God is saying is, I left this as an open-ended project in my world. I created people, I created life, I created opportunities, and I left some people that the way that I am going to provide for them is with partners. If you choose to be a partner and help that person, who are you partnering with? Partnering with me. When a person partners with God, a person is partnering with transcendence. It changes the dynamic of the human. The human dynamic shifts. As we would call it in Kabbalah, there's creator and created, right? You have this in the world in general. You have people who are just along for the ride and the people who are creating the ride, right? When you're living life and you're taking and you're living, you're kind of just in the economy, in the world, in the business, you're making more, you're making less. You're all in this box of, I'm a created being, God created the world, I'm a created being, and I'm bound. I'm bound by the limits of my experience. The minute that you're going to partner with God, God's a creator, not a created. So now you're on that side of the table. You're on that side of the equation. Now you
Rabbi, I was amazed when part of our studying, you gave me a wonderful book. It talks about a lot of times, I think we think, oh, when you're wealthy, like the wealthy need the poor as much as the poor need the wealthy. And I think a lot of times we think like if we're the one giving the money, if we're actually the donor versus the donee, that somehow we're in some inferior position. Like I'm the guy with money and I'm helping you out. Don't I feel good about that? But I know the spiritual texts say, no, actually, a lot of times it's the giver who's giving more, who's getting more spiritually than the receiver. And that blew my mind because I think we all have this ego, oh, I'm the charity guy. And to your point, when you make this open-ended relationship that you talk about from like spirit or God is really a way, it's salvation for the giver. It's salvation for the giver as much as it is for the receiver. I don't know if you use the word salvation, but that's what it comes to me. It's what it feels like. It's actually, and from my own experience, not just like saying this theoretically, when I tell you like the joy that I'm feeling, that is salvation from a guy who used to be really tense and writing those checks like hurt. Small checks hurt, like they hurt. And to have salvation of freedom and then be able to see the results of it. Like, we're going to talk a little bit about what you and I co-created together, the charity that you and I co-created together. And you start to see people enjoy and meeting each other. And you had a little piece of that. Oh my gosh. It's like, wow. Amazing, right?
What's the Hebrew word for charity?
Tzedakah.
What does it actually mean?
I always think of tzedakah as meaning charity.
Right. That's the translation that's given. Right. Tzedakah comes from the word tzedek, which is justice. Which means tzedakah is us being God's justice in the world. God is essentially saying, and it's almost emotional, where God's saying, look, I created some people with wealth and some people without, and you're going to have to go clean up the mess. You're going to clean up my mess and bring balance to the world. And through that, you have an active part. Again, you're becoming a creator. You're on my side of the table. So now if you're a partner with me, so the benefits of being God's partner are insane. Because God isn't limited. And this is where, coming back to the idea of test me so that I will make you rich, essentially, is once you're on God's side of the table, you don't know where the next big break is going to come from. We always have ideas and plans in our head of where the next big break is going to be. And they come from places we don't expect, especially when we create this open-ended space, this vessel, so to speak. I do think of it as like a basket. And it just says, you'll put the basket out and say, God, you provide the rain.
I'm still kind of amazed when you say that tzedakah is not charity, it's actually justice. Justice. And by the world, like you said, in the world, like it's not like I've always assumed before I studied with you that it was supposed to be like peace on earth meant that everybody's going to have the same amount of money. Imagine all the people. We go right to John Lennon's song, But this dichotomy is there for it's for all of us to do our spiritual work. For the wealthy, for the fulfillionaire, for the wealthy person to do just as much of work as the poor person in giving and receiving. Because I find for a lot of people, giving's hard, but for a lot of people, receiving's hard too.
What's harder?
I know so many people who don't know how to receive. And I find that when you become a better giver, you become a better receiver. And then the currency gets to really, really flow because you're really allowing both in. I know so many people that they're like, if they just can't receive. And by the way, if you think that, if you're wondering why some people like they're working hard, they got great business plans, but like your business isn't working exactly right, like you keep getting setbacks. A lot of times I think it's that energy of those money stories. If you think that money's the root of all evil, or in my case, if you believe, if your grandfather told you that, money doesn't grow on trees and that the shoe's going to drop if you make money, no wonder why I suffered and it took me so long to make money, because there was no clarity around the rule of the giving and the receiving and being a good receiver and a good giver. Now it just gets easy,
right?
Because it's no big deal,
right?
It's actually just no big deal either way. And let's talk about that. Let's bring this into a true story between you and I. Because I used to give my time. When you're younger, you give more of your time. And when you get older, hopefully if you make some money, you start to give more of your money. Now, actually, I like to give more money than time. I've got more money and less time when I was younger.
Less time left. Yeah.
When I was younger, I had more time and less money. And so you and I kind of dreamed up this idea, and it was interesting. We both dreamed at it from different perspectives. We dreamed of basically creating a center for young professional, Jewish young professionals in Austin, Texas, and you were doing it already, but like a center where people could meet, connect. Because as we know, that age group of kind of like 20 to 44, those are the critical years of having a spiritual community. You might meet your best friend, you might meet your husband or wife, you might meet your future business partner. And there's really, like, people don't go to church or temples. Like, that's not happening. Like, hate to say it, but that's kind of over. So how could, and you've been doing it for a long time already, but the idea was like, how do you create a more branded, relevant, spiritually connected community that people are going to want to go to, since people don't hang out generally at churches and temples on Friday nights? And you started addressing this. You landed here, raised here, and you kind of were given this mission that you've had to create. And if I can just get a little bit to the story, like you were doing it for 10 years
10
you've been doing it.
10 years in March. And last March.
And it's called YJP, Young Jewish Professionals. And you were doing this, when I met you, Rabbi, you were doing this out of your house.
Yes.
Your house.
A very small house.
At that point, I think you had 5 or 6 children. We're now at 8.
Yeah.
And it was the very small house. I'm going to say it was 1,000 square feet, maybe?
1,100, yeah.
1,100 square feet. But it's almost like Field of Dreams. Like, you will build it and they will come. Because all I know is I'm a stranger. I had a couple coffees. You said, come over to my house. Come check out a Friday night Sabbath dinner. And I come, and your place is packed. In 1,000 square feet, you've got 40 or 50 people. And I'm like, you can't, like, you're bursting at the seams already. And you and I talked about this as I got today, but I'm like, Rabbi, this isn't sustainable. A, you're having more children. And B, more and more people are coming to see you. People seem to want to be in community. They want to be in these dinners. They want to be in these celebrations. And you're bringing them back to cultural identity in a really relevant way. So then we had a dream. We said, let's go to a bigger house, right?
Well, initially we said, we have to buy something. That's what
we said. Yeah,
we have to buy. We
got to find a center.
We have to find a place. We have to buy. And then everything we looked at was terrible. Everything we looked at was hard. And I think one time I was in New York, and I sent you and Brian Copeland on, it wasn't a goose chase. We thought it might be a good opportunity. And you were like, I remember I was FaceTiming you because I was in New York, and you guys like FaceTiming, you're like looking at like, if we close this door and we like change the staircase, like would this work? But it made no sense.
Yeah.
And
we looked at a couple places together. Yeah, and by the way, at the time, Rabbi, we really didn't have a framework. We just had a dream.
Yeah.
We didn't know how much. We didn't know how we would raise it. We didn't know anything.
Right.
And it really was a dream of, let's just put it out there. Like, could you imagine a center where people can get together, be hip? You've been talking, we're just creating this now. It's called High House, CHAI. High is life, correct?
Yes.
Life, energy, high energy Judaism is what we talk about. And this idea of like, how do we create almost like a spiritual WeWork?
Yeah.
A spiritual Soha. Spiritual Soha,
yeah.
Without the ego, just the fun.
Yeah.
Whether we cold plunge, drink coffee, hang out, or celebrate, or all the above.
Yeah.
And I was all in on that because I know that religion's kind of like, feels like it needs to be, all religions, I feel like mostly need to be rebranded. Everybody's busier. Everyone's on social media. People want to hit. And there's so many people that just don't have the time or the attention span of what worked 100 or 50 years ago for our parents. So I got on board. But what was interesting, Rabbi, was there was no proof that this was going to work. And I was at this men's retreat with a guy named Reuben. You know Reuben. And he's a great philanthropist. I started making money. I was like watching him, and he's giving away millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he's giving it with such joy. And I'm like, who is this strange man who keeps just, everywhere I look, he just keeps giving money away? And he looked at me, he goes, JP, I'm going to mentor you on this. I'm going to take you under my wing and teach you how to be a great philanthropist. I'm like, no, thank you, Ruben. This is going to cost me. I don't know. I don't know if I want to do this or not. No, you're doing this with me, JP. He said, what's on your mind? What do you want to do? I said, well, I met this rabbi. He wants to do like this young professional center. He goes, great. That's a great place to start. And so I gave him an amount of money. He said, well, what would you be willing to do? And I threw out a number. He said, oh, no. You're going to like double or triple or quadruple that number. I said, no, not. No, slow down. Slow down, Charlie. This is already a big check. And Ruben's like, no, if you really, really want, A, if you want to be a great philanthropist, and B, if you really want, and first by the way, first he appealed to my ego. Wouldn't it be great to see your name on a building? Which is a great way to get people in the door. Yeah, it might be fun to see my name on a building. Right. Yeah. And Judaism, by the way, says that's okay.
Yes, it says it's good.
And certain things, if that's what it takes to rally the next guy to donate, then put his name on the door.
100%.
Don't be shy. So I committed to you before we had any evidence. I made a commitment to you. I remember we were sitting there. I'm like, and it was Ruben, just to let you know, who pushed me to about 4x my original number.
Amazing.
And when I said it, I couldn't believe I said it. And that was done. You just looked at me and said, thank you. I think were you a little surprised?
Yeah, of course.
We were both a little surprised.
Yeah.
We both were probably surprised at the same time. Like, what am I saying? And you're like, what's he doing? And I said to you, Rabbi, I think it was the first year I wrote a check. It wasn't the whole check. It was because we didn't have the thing. It was just a building fund for a while. And I said, Rabbi, we were just studying. I said, you once told me this idea that give till it hurts. And I said to you, Rabbi, honestly, I'm very uncomfortable right now. I'm very uncomfortable with this check and this commitment that I made. And do you remember what you said to me?
Give till it hurts. So God will pay it back.
God will pay it back. But you also said something else to me. You said, if it doesn't hurt, you won't spiritually grow. He's like, if it's an easy ask, if it's an easy gift, if it's something that's easy within your wheelhouse, you don't really grow from that because that's safe. JP, that edge is where you spiritually grow. That's actually the roadway to fulfillment. Everything we're talking about, giving and receiving, becoming better at it, creating more wealth, being more joyous in your heart, was me the first time living on that edge of being uncomfortable. And then you said to me the whole thing about there's proof. There's proof that you're going to actually, that you did the test, you've said the test, and you watch, because now we're going to follow this law of like abundance that God says, test me. And I'm thinking, I'm thinking, Rabbi, when you said that to me? Oh, this guy's full of it. I love my Rabbi, but this is getting a little too woo-woo. Even for me, this is a little too woo-woo. And I called you about 3 months later. Do you remember the phone call?
It wasn't 3 months later.
How was it? When was it?
2 weeks.
2 weeks later?
I remember because you were shocked. And you called me. Because we had this conversation, this specific conversation we had in, I want to say it was December-ish. Yeah. Or maybe it was at a cuspy time. It was like one of those like transitionary periods. And you called me 2 weeks later and you're like, Rabbi, you won't believe it. And I'm like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. And then.
And so the craziest thing happened. I get a call from my CPA who says, JP, because I was just filing my taxes. He says, JP, there's a new law that President Trump had passed. This was term one, and it positively had an impact on real estate. It's called accelerated depreciation. And he goes, JP, I hadn't calculated Trump's new accelerated depreciation law in your thing, but now that I did, you're going to save this much money from your taxes, and you're going to get a refund because I already paid in my taxes, and you're going to get a refund. Do you know the dollar amount on that check was pretty much that thing I was sweating about was the refund that I got within $20,000?
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Literally.
It was actually, if I remember correctly, it was all of your giving for that year.
Yeah. I think
all your giving. It was all your giving for that year.
Yeah, I think that's right.
You had added.
It was all the giving of that year. Yeah.
You had said I feel like I'm either at 10% or near very, very close to 10, maybe even a little above 10%.
Right. Oh, the 10%.
And there was like it was a lot. You pushed yourself really hard.
I was pushing.
And you said, I'm doing this and I'm uncomfortable, and then you got the phone call. You're like, it's literally the dollar amount of what I gave this year. I just got everything back.
Yeah.
That I had given.
Yeah.
Plus, you got the credit for it.
Yeah.
It was a win-win.
Total win-win. And then giving just seems like it's the gift that keeps on giving a lot of times, especially if you're connected. I was really fortunate. I had no idea, quite frankly, that this interaction between you and I would have so many gifts. I knew it was important to you, and I thought it was a cool idea. I really think that creating spiritual communities and bringing people together is one of the highest priorities we can do in this world when people are sad and lonely and maybe lost. And especially in your 20s when you've left your parents, you're out of college, like I see the importance of this. Like I think it's super high on a list of things to create happiness and joy in the world. But I couldn't have even pictured the imagination. And then finally, Rabbi, if we can, and then before we leave, we're going to talk about before you guys go, You're actually going to get the technology and the higher energy. We're gonna end on Marmalades on the 8 levels of giving. So stick around for a sec because you're about to get the roadmap here. But fast forward, last December or last November, you send me a little link on the internet. You're like, this could be a cool place. Maybe this is our spot that we can do this place in. And part of me, of course, didn't want to really deal with it. Like, oh, whatever. Like, yeah, maybe this is it. And then I toured it together. And I knew it was the spot. Like, I'm a real estate guy. The location was perfect. Everything about it was perfect. And I was almost like, damn, this is perfect. Now this is going to be real. Oh, shit. Now we have to go raise a bunch of money and do this. Like, everything was hard. And by the way, it's still hard today. There's days where it's still hard. It's not like we have it all figured out. And we put it under contract. And it was expensive. It was a multiple $1 million deal to get the real estate, but it was gorgeous. And there was no proof that we could do it. In fact, a lot of people, Rabbi, told me that we weren't going to do it.
Right.
If I remember, we had about 90 days to get a bank loan.
Yeah. We put it under contract early December, but we really couldn't like aggressively kick on it until end of December. Because it was just the way that things worked out. We started working on it, but our actual, let's say our working time on this was January, February, March.
We had to close. And the guy said to us, the owner said to us, because he was getting he said, if you don't close by April 4th, I'm taking your money. You'll never see this property again. So we really had 90 days. We had a little bit of money in a bank account. We had a dream. And we had a lot of people telling us we weren't going to do it, that we couldn't raise that kind of money, a low 7-digit kind of commitment, that we couldn't get that done. And but there's more. We had to get a bank loan.
Right.
To a nonprofit.
Yep.
Which didn't have a huge track record, just a dream.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
We had to enroll enough people to say yes.
Correct.
And we had to put down non-refundable money so that if we didn't come through, we were going to lose $25,000, $35,000, $40,000, $50,000.
At the end, it was like 40, yeah.
We were going to lose like $40,000 if we didn't pull this off. And we didn't have a plan. We made the plan up. And it really amazed me. The more people told us that we weren't going to do it, the more I knew we would. You were cool as a cucumber most of the time, but you were like, you learned a lot, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
And I think on your side, what you learned, it was kind of funny, Rabbi, to watch on your side, because we're like gathering money from people and like sketching the dream. We actually got the mayor of Austin, Mayor Kirk Watson, to speak. Next thing I knew, we had like no place to do this. Next thing I knew, we had 200 people and we got it done. So coming a week before, 3 days before, we weren't sure if we had the money. We were calling each other, and you said to me, Rabbi, you said, you know what? I'm going to stop asking for the 500s and the 1,000s. We don't have time for that. We need to ask for the 5,000s and the 10,000s. So I think for you too, it's kind of funny. Even the only thing about currency, that sometimes you just got to raise the dollars.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was interesting because it's a different kind of, raising for an annual, and we have an annual campaign every year as a nonprofit. Raising for an annual campaign. Our community is a young community. Part of the challenge is that we're talking about young professionals that are at they're beginning of their careers. They're just starting out. They're 23, 25, 28, 30, but they're just beginning. They're not sitting in your seat yet. One day, with the help of God. But we're raising from them. But at the end of the day, we have to go to people who are philanthropists that are at the edge of the community, who are peering in, and we have to invite them in and say, come, sit down with us, walk the property with us. Oh, you can't make it. We're available tomorrow or the next day, whatever. Any day that you want to come, we'll make time for you. So we can run and get it open and like that. Just to
literally just got over the finish line with it. And we're still raising money because we still got to get the furniture and now do the whole thing. But it's what an incredible feat that we're...
And it's active. What's crazy is that the thirst for the space was so strong that even as we just finished renovating phase, we're in the middle of phase, I would say 2.5 now of renovations, but it's a constant, like the amount of people that have come through our doors in the last 30 days over Jewish high holiday seasons, hundreds have come through the doors. We had dinner together in the courtyard, our 60 best friends sat around together and had, dinner together.
You have your first Friday Shabbats now. They're like between 100 and 150 people every time.
Every time.
So, Rabbi, I didn't know until we were going through the teaching that there's actually different spiritual and energetic levels of giving. So, guys, giving has all these different unique quantities. All giving is not equal, it turns out. There's Maimonides and Rambam that talks about, actually spells out for you, the sages, these 8 levels of giving and what a difference it makes with this intention of how you give and technique of how you give. Rabbi, can we talk about the 8 levels of giving?
Sure. So first of all, I would emphasize that there's 2 pieces here. One is how much to give, right? And we mentioned earlier there's this idea of tithing, and I actually had a conversation with a member of my community recently. They're like, "Oh yeah, this tithing thing, not a Jewish thing at all." And I'm like, "Whoa, slow down."
Most Jewish people don't know. A lot of people, yeah,
they think it's a Christian thing, and they think that it's Christian for those who go to church and are super into it. They tithe. It's like that's like those people tithe, but we obviously just give whenever the impulse hits us, probably. And what you don't realize is that if you're committed to tithing, it might end up being a lot more than you're ready for.
I think most people undergive.
Because
when you give from that place of just spontaneously, it doesn't really add up. It's a discipline.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just like managing your money.
I think the truth is, if you're asking me as a professional money manager, sometime no, if you ask me as how I think it should be done, and the way that I know that I've in the Jewish community, I know it's done in the religious community many times. People will make sure to give 10%, and one of the ways they do that is they have a separate account called their charity or their tzedakah account. And every time they make a deal, and again, remember, 10% is not gross of everything. It's 10% of net after like all, it's what you're actually making, your take-home profit, so to speak.
By the way, for those who call it tzedakah, we also have something called a donor-advised fund. Ask me later how to do this tax advantage, because you can literally get the government to participate with you in this giving.
Right, so it's
a lesson for another day, but you can't get the government to help you with this.
But some people do it with a DAF, or some people will do it as a regular account. Nowadays, more people have moved into DAFs because the financially tax-wise it became better. And what they'll do is they'll put the money into DAF, and then they'll write checks from that. But that way they know, they don't mix business and pleasure almost in a certain sense. They'll allocate the money towards charity when they make it. But to decide who they're going to give it to and how they're going to allocate that, all they want to make sure is that by the end of the year, they hit 0 on that account. And then they start rolling it the next year.
Here's better, a little tax event. When you start making money, what's even better than that, you start to invest your money from your DAF, and the proceeds and the revenue that you get, the profits you get to give away every year. So like I'm doing this with my kids right now. The more we can grow our investment accounts in our charitable DAF, donor advised fund, that money all goes to charity. And the goal is 1 year is that literally as the dollar amounts get higher, it's all coming from profit, so that you keep this family legacy for years to come. Like an endowment. Like an endowment.
Personal endowment.
Yeah.
So the first thing would be to make sure to give 10%. And there are people, I know a bunch of people who strive for 20%. And 20% obviously is a lot. If you're going to ask me, and I think that once you cross a certain threshold in wealth, 10% and 20%, the number looks a lot bigger, but it doesn't change your lifestyle that much. It's one watch less. You'll push getting the car by 6 months instead of getting it today. You'll get it in 6 months from now. But the 10 to 20% spiritually, it terraforms the way that you think of giving. Because again, from 0 to 10% is huge. So let's take it in baby steps. But 10 to 20%, you don't look at yourself anymore as a person who has wealth. You look at yourself, as we spoke earlier, as a steward. You look at yourself as being this vessel, this channel. And channels have, to use your metaphor of a river, how much water can pass through a bucket? Well, you have to empty it and refill it, empty it and refill it, empty it and refill it. How much water can pass through a pipe? Much, much more. And that pipe, you can expand it. If it's a physical man-made pipe, then you have to expand it. But if it's like a river or if it's a canal, it begins to expand itself. And suddenly there's more room, and suddenly there's more pass-through. There's more spiritual pass-through, spiritual energy, which is what money is. It's passing through, it's flowing through. And suddenly, instead of having this amount of money, and you give us away, this amount of money, now you're a steward. So God's going to say, oh, look, that's wonderful. You're doing such a great job giving. I should probably give you an extra $100,000. See what you do with that. Maybe an extra maybe $500,000. Who knows? And it goes.
So tell me about the 8 levels.
Okay, so the 8 levels. So I think I don't have the list fully in front of me. Yeah, there you go. The 8 levels speaks not about the amount of money that you're giving, but the 8 levels of charity speak to the method, how you give the money, because there's a very interesting difference. And it speaks to both what it does to you and what it does for the recipient. Okay? So the first level of giving is giving and you don't want to, right? You're still giving. You still get credit for it. God loves you.
Who gave what that? Oh, fine. Or they'll say, that's such transactional. Like, I'll give to your charity, you give to mine.
And it's guilt. It's very much guilt-based, right? Give to this. And you're like, I don't want to give to this. Like, well, what are your neighbors going to think? What are your friends going to think? Everyone else is lining up to give to this charity. You're not giving to this charity. You are, right? And so, I was going to use the Yiddish term, but I won't. And so it becomes kind of, so you give because you have to. Or the other way of doing that is when somebody knocks. I mean, the most visceral experience of that is when someone knocks on your window at a light. So if you just look away and then they walk by and whatever, but they knock and like, so you open it up and you hopefully have some cash. You give them $2. Have you given them the money? Absolutely. Have they received? 100%. See, it doesn't take away from the fact that you gave, but it's the lowest energy exchange possible. Okay.
Giving money reluctantly.
Correct.
And less than what's asked for.
The next level is giving happily, but less than what you should be giving, right? Whether it's the situational experience or whether it's holistically over the course of the time, over the course of a year. Someone who's extremely wealthy who gives a couple thousand a year. Is it bad? Of course, it's a good thing. It's holy, it's happy, it's spiritual.
I know so many people I find sometimes my wealthier friends are the chintziest when it comes to giving.
They say that lower middle class Americans are the most generous. Yeah,
probably pro rata for their share of money they make versus
no, it's not the dollar amount, obviously. But yeah, I mean, someone who's making millions and millions of dollars can give $1 million gift. Yeah, but yeah, it's exactly. The next level is giving the amount you should give, giving gladly. Level 3 is giving the amount you should give and giving gladly, but after they approach you. They ask you, and you say, sure, I'll be happy to give.
Now you're on the third level out of 8.
Third level of 8. Fourth level is giving before they ask. Because for the person, now we're thinking about levels of embarrassment for the person who's doing the request. So if it's an organization and the person coming isn't really invested personally, but the truth is, I'll speak to you as a fundraiser, it's always a little bit personal, right? You come to a donor, at the end of the day, it's about the relationship. At the end of the day, it's about, you're getting a note to your face. It's like, yeah. And most of the time, it's not, again, if it's a massive organization with thousands of fundraisers and they're going out and their donor development is just a system in their head, but those also don't get the biggest gifts and people aren't giving. We're talking about real relationships, whether it's to an organization or whether it's to, an actual person who needs help. When they walk up to you and say, and you see it coming, so you can either wait and let them ask, or you can say, how can I help you? What are you raising for? Or even, I know you're raising for, how much do you need? Or even, I'm going to give you this. Is that what you were expecting? I'm happy to support you. What is the thing? And the truth is, you should know that when I'm in Crown Heights in New York, visiting Chabad headquarters, Chabad, the main synagogue, there are people who walk around, begging for dollars and nickels. And there are young Chabad rabbis who are just about ready to go out into the world and launch their own little center of some sort. And they're walking around with credit card machines. And they're like, so some of them are like asking, but some of them they're very hesitant. They've never asked for money before. And this is kind of their way of like learning, getting also raising $40,000, $50,000 just to get out there.
Yeah.
And I always make sure I try to be at this level. I don't,
You'll preemptively.
I'll preemptively say, where you going and can I help out?
Amazing.
I'm giving them small, very small gifts. But the point is, it's on my budget. But, yeah, I try to at least at this level of the energy exchange, where again this is level number 4, before they ask. Sometimes it means that there's a big open ask to the community and you step up yourself. Sometimes it means calling up the person. This is rare, where you call up the person and say, "Hey, count me in for X, Y, and Z." If that's already that's great. It's a very powerful level. Okay, number 5, giving anonymously, and who's getting it, and they know that right? It's like it's a person. This is really comes down much more to like personal giving, helping somebody who's in need. So giving they don't know who's giving, so they don't have shame. Next time that they walk into the grocery store and they see you, they don't feel this awkward experience. You know you helped them. They don't know they got it from you, so they're just like, hey, JP, great to see you. And little do they know, you just gifted them $1,000.
So that means you gave it to unanimously.
You gave it anonymously, but but you know who you're giving to. That is level number 5. 6 is where you're giving and you don't know who's getting. It protects their identity more. And even though they know they got it from you, but they know that you don't know. And so therefore they have no shame. In other words, it's not that there's an uncomfortability, especially if someone's in need. Nowadays everything's like on the GoFundMe's and these online links, and people are shilling publicly. And I think it's an interesting. It's good and it's bad. I think it's funky the way that the effect that it has. Obviously there's scammers out there that have taken advantage of that system. But we're talking about people with.
Well, what I'm hearing you saying is that you want to keep people for the receiver. The more spiritual protection you can do that their ask isn't awkward, or you're not forcing them to feel like a beggar, and you're keeping their dignity. That's what I'm hearing from all these levels that you're talking about. It's really dignity of the receiver and the relationship of the receiver to the giver around that dignity.
Yeah. And also, by the way, part of it is how good you can feel. Because if you're giving anonymously, then you don't get to tell anybody, right? There's a famous Larry David clip from Curb where he anonymously gives to a hospital, and then some other guy gives like the second or the third tier, but they did it publicly. And so he's walking around the reception the whole time. Who do you think this anonymous guy is? I wonder who it could be. Yeah, it must be a great, great person. Everyone's like, at some point, someone walks in and says, Larry, we figured it out. It's you. Okay, now shut up. Right? And he's like, well, me, it's anonymous. It says it. It's like, it's a great bit. But there's a piece there which is like, and this goes to your point from earlier, it's like putting your name on a building. There is an aspect of it, especially when it comes to not a personal gift to a person, but a gift to the community, or a gift like, a hospital or a fund or things like that, in which case we're actually reaching the highest level, which I'll explain in a moment. But when you put your name on that and you're putting it out there, some people love it. Some people feel uncomfortable by it. But the goal of it is that it should inspire others.
Right. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
If it inspires others, you should do it. If it doesn't
100%.
inspire others, you shouldn't do it.
But it will.
Okay, Rabbi, take us to the final 2.
Final 2. Giving anonymously to someone, to an anonymous recipient.
Right. You're giving, you don't know who you're giving to.
Correct.
And the recipient, it's just you're giving.
By the way, I was going to say the 7th level where you put it on, putting a name on the building is 7th level, because you're giving openly. Everyone knows that you gave. You don't really know who's receiving. Even when you walk in, let's say you're putting it on the Chai House, right? You put the name on the Chai House. So when you walk into the Chai House and you see the people there, it isn't the feeling of where you gave to that person the money. You gave it to the community and they're enjoying. It becomes this like transitionary pot where it's like, you gave it to the Shabbat dinner, and now at the Shabbat dinner, everyone's eating. And it happens to be that you paid for it. But they don't feel like they're eating off your plate.
It's back to dignity.
Correct.
To the receiver.
Correct.
So that's a high level.
It's it's
level 7.
Number 6. The number 7 is the next level where you don't know it's anonymous and anonymous. Both sides are anonymous. And that is the experience of giving in a charity box. Right? Where you're giving and you don't know who's receiving, or giving to a fund that distributes the money to people in need. Whether it's in Israel, whether it's in America, whether it's Jewish, non-Jewish, whatever it is, you're giving money. They don't know who you are. They never even heard of you. They're never going to hear of you. Maybe you go in the donor report, and so all the other donors get to know that you gave to this thing. But the person who's receiving doesn't get, and you have no idea who's receiving. You never meet them. You never know them. The better ones in Israel, they have this, where they have, it's called Kol Chabad, and they have, it's basically credit cards. And you don't know, but some of the credit cards the people pay for, and some of the credit cards you just paid for. And they go to the store and they just swipe like regular. The experience is completely seamless. And they have ways of vetting to make sure it's not like some idiot scammers, things like that. All of these charities are very, very on top of like making sure but then some people they need help. That's just the way it is. It's the way the world is.
So Rabbi,
highest level.
Tell me the highest level.
Highest level.
No one ever gets this one. This is the greatest party trick you'll ever have. Highest level.
The highest level is to give someone a job. Give someone, they don't need your help. Exactly. They don't need your help.
Back to dignity. So it's interesting. It's not even about money. It's like giving someone a skill, from my understanding, that they'll never have to ask for
Or an
requesting because
opportunity.
you've taught them the skill or you've given them the resource to like stop the cycle of having to ask.
Correct.
And that's the highest level of giving.
Teach a man to fish.
Teach a man to fish.
Teach a man to fish.
Would you have known that? Now you have this for the bar for your 3,000 or 4,000 year old wisdom. Rabbi, I want to ask you a question as we kind of finalize up here. When I talk about being a fulfillionaire and what it is to be a fulfillionaire, what from a rabbinical, from your standpoint, when I say I'm trying to encourage people to become fulfillionaires, what does that mean to you?
Well, I wanted to ask you that question, but what I wanted to ask is I wanted to reverse the question.
Okay.
Reverse
Of course
Uno.
you do, you're a rabbi.
Reverse Uno. I wanted to ask you, in fulfillionaire, the middle piece of the word is the most interesting piece, I think. Fill. Right? The inaire at the end is from the millionaire. Fulfill is the interesting piece, is the middle piece. Do you see fulfillionaire about being filled, like a full bucket, or an empty bucket? And that it can go in many ways.
Right. Definitely a full bucket. That's the whole point. Is to have a full bucket, knowing that you can have it all. The shoe doesn't have to drop. You can be a good steward of money. You can have joy with money. And you can have all these things with money when you understand what money is and what money isn't. And when you understand what wealth is and wealth isn't. And if you leave a light of purpose, not only are you going to be lighting up the world, but it's your own salvation as an entrepreneur to find joy and fulfillment, to find the full bucket. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing things, and it's going to be a never-ending search that makes for good comedy shows and tragic movies.
And I think that the way you get a full bucket is by emptying your bucket.
Tell me more.
Where can God's blessing rest? In a full bucket or an empty bucket? An empty bucket, right? So how do you keep having this full bucket? What is the full bucket? You're speaking from the perspective of what the feeling inside you is, right? And I'm thinking about what is the mechanism to have that feeling. And what's shocking, I think, is that the more you empty your bucket, the more full it becomes. It's a paradox. You keep emptying out your bucket, and whether it means to help other people, we're speaking here about, physically helping people, whether it means giving of your time, whether it means, again, you can't give actual time, you can't give actual health, you can't give those things, you can't give away. So the feeling full there comes from being intentional. I mean, this is what you speak about in the fulfillionaire, being intentional, being pragmatic, being not having scarcity, not being scared of what's gonna come next, the anxiety, getting rid of the anxiety. When it comes to wealth, that bucket, the more you empty the bucket, and not by being irresponsible, not drilling a hole in the bottom of the bucket and watching it all leak out, but the more you empty the bucket to help other people, the more the bucket widens, the more there's room for more of God's blessing.
The more you give, the more you receive. The more you receive, the more you give.
Correct. It becomes a flywheel.
But your point would be, give first and watch what happens. Don't wait. Don't be like everyone else on the sidelines and say one day. Give and watch what happens with the receipts.
Don't wait till you're 80 to start giving.
Yeah.
And the truth is, by the way, you'd see who are the biggest philanthropists? People who started giving when they didn't have. And they're the ones who, both sides, they're the ones who are constantly giving, but they're also the ones who, somehow, they are the ones who made it far along on the journey towards wealth, because they've already they have the exercise there. So God's like, look, you've got the muscles built. I'll give you the load to carry.
Rabbi, I just want to thank you. It's so great having you on. It's so great to, we just go on with this for a long time. You and I tend to go on long journeys. This could be a 3-hour podcast, but I just want to thank you for all the love and wisdom and caring that you brought to my life, my family's life. We've covered so many topics, from money to fulfillment today, to what is marriage, which we had some pretty good conversations about marriage and raising kids. And I feel like, there's so much wisdom sometimes that's missed. And I remember one of my close relatives said to me, and I didn't understand at the time because we were just on our coffee date. It's good I made the second one. He said, having a rabbi in your life, a wise person to help you get through life, is the biggest gift you can have. And growing up not religious, I didn't really understand what that meant. But 7 years later, I really understand what that means. I just thank you again and again and again for this wonderful relationship, collaboration, fun that we're having together. And I just appreciate you so much.
Pleasure's mine, and thank you for everything you've done for us. Your investment, both in the project, but more importantly, our friendship, is something I value deeply. And I think that And I tell my friends, they're also rabbis. All my friends are rabbis, and they, they're like, how's your life? You've accomplished so much. And what I say, find yourself a JP, and you'll be fine.
That's all they need.
That's all you need is one JP.
Find one JP, you'll be cool.
But it is beautiful and to watch. And we've been very close friends. We're watching each other's families. I mean, we're in very different stages in life. We're watching each other's families grow up, and the kids get older, and just everything develop. It's very powerful. And
I think one day it'd be fun, Rabbi, to have you on podcast too, where there's so much wisdom you give me through the years. I wish I could go like the 50 top things you've taught me, because I'd love to rattle them off, but you guys don't get to hear that today. So thanks again. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Fulfillionaire. I think that you, hopefully you got some gems from this, that you're realizing that this really opens up, and hopefully you had a couple aha moments of realizing that the more you expand out in your heart, the closer you are to being a fulfillionaire. Feel that edge sometimes. Do it with a plan. You know me, I'm about mindset and a financial framework. Within that, you heard it, 10%, but almost every major religion that I know has tithing. It's not just, and find your stretch point. Even if you're tight right now, start with a small one. And remember that it's not just about money. It could be time, effort. There's many, many ways to give. So get as creative as you can, and let's keep growing together. Thank you. So for everyone listening, whether it's money, time, love, or energy, ask yourself, where am I holding back the flow? Because the moment you open your hands, your heart opens too. And when your heart opens, you become wealthy in every sense of the word. You will find your true fulfillment. Thank you, Rabbi Mendy, for your wisdom, your friendship, and for constantly reminding me that giving isn't about letting go. It's about letting flow. Hey, if you're ready to live with more purpose, peace, and clarity around your money, join us for the next Fulfillionaire workshop. This is where I go into the specifics behind how to get your money and purpose fully aligned. Check it out in the show notes.